Welcome to the Pill Diaries, and all I can say is things are never as they appear. For example, just look at my t-shirt. It's actually a bunch of pussycats. Yeah. Anyway, here's what I think is actually going on. Well, not what is actually going on, what is likely going on. So, because I've said a whole bunch of things in the last few weeks. Some of them have been turned out to be either true or looking like they are most likely true. So, for example, we have a few countries now that are all saying that it looks like a bioweapon, just like a link that I sent out nearly a month ago now from the what's his name, Julius. I can't remember his name, but I can put the link down below. American guy, professor. He wrote the Biowarfare Act. I'm pretty sure some of you would have seen this already, even if you haven't seen my link. And he said that it looks like it originates in a lab in, I think it's North Carolina in the USA, which is quite funny because the Spanish flu, even though it's called the Spanish flu, actually came from Kansas in the USA as well. It's kind of strange these things come from there. When China's the petri dish, what you expect these viruses to mutate, since there's all these people in close confined with all these animals all around and these disgustingly filthy markets and stuff they have over there. Anyway, I've got a few theories here, and the only reason I want to say these, I don't usually like to throw out conspiracy theories and that kind of stuff because they could be wrong, of course. It's only when I think something is like damn sure that I usually spout this kind of rhetoric. Now, the one thing is that it's most likely a bioweapon, given the fact there's different strains of the virus being found in different areas, and they all have different mortality rates. And the highest mortality rates you'll find is in Italy and in Iran. And you have to ask yourself, why did it start in China and Iran first, when there's quite a bit of distance between China and Iran, and it's also a different strain of the virus, which is more deadly. Could it be that Iran's pretty close to Israel, and Israel, England, Australia, and in Canada, and America, all these countries are in close cahoots? But they also have, and this is a theory that's I've got all these side theories. So one theory is that all of our governments are the enemy, as I said in the video, perhaps I said in yesterday's video. But it could be the fact that we are all cattle and they are all our collective enemy, and they are our collective parasitic, governments that feed off us. They give us their false money. We go away and do our jobs and focus so much on doing our job that we don't focus on our own lives and becoming better people and spreading love and sharing knowledge and all this sort of stuff. The things that we should be doing to move the human race forward. Because for all we know, our job as human beings could be to populate the universe. And here we are screwing around this little planet and not going anywhere because these group of assholes holding us back. That could be what's going on, right? What also could be going on is we all know that for years we have been kicking the can down the road from 2008 financial collapse, which was caused by the banking sector, particularly, but not exclusively, but particularly in the United States and England. Those two countries are responsible for war, for generations of war, as soon as they worked out that they can start printing money and not have it hinged to the gold standard, meaning it doesn't matter how much gold you have in your vaults at Fort Knox and in the Reserve Bank of England. When you can start printing notes that have no correlation to what you have in your bank vaults, then you can fund as many wars as you want. You can start picking fights with everybody, and they did, right? We already saw when when Libya decided to try unenslave Africa by creating the gold dinar currency, because they have a lot of gold, they have a lot of oil. They thought, well, let's take away the IMF power over Africa and let's create the gold dinar and let's help dig them out of IMF debt and start getting somewhere. What happens? Boom. Hillary Clinton comes along. We came, we saw, he died. Ha 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 ha. Uncontrollable cackle that she gave, right? The woman's truly evil. And just in the political game right now, you have to ask the question as to why Bernie Sanders, out of nowhere, twice now in a row, sabotaged his own campaign. Last time he was against Hillary Clinton. He was clearly more popular than she was, and yet he allowed her, put up no fight. He allowed her to defraud him of the situation. Looks a bit odd. Oh, look, he's doing it again, right? Isn't it strange? He's, oh, Joe Biden, Joe Biden is a friend of mine. I like Joe Biden. Could you suck his balls anymore? You know what I mean? The guy is defrauding you. One, he's senile. He shouldn't even be going for the job. The DNC shoehorned him in there. I personally believe that everyone in the DNC and the other side, except with the possible exception of Trump, who is maybe a little bit of a maverick, a little bit of a narcissist, a little bit self-serving, possibly a fraction of patriot. You'll never know. We'll never know. We're just the cattle, right? He was. A lot of Bernie Sanders supporters actually voted for him because they wouldn't vote for Hillary, because we all knew she was evil, right? It's like, well, better the lesser of two evils. They thought that was her. No, it wasn't. We all knew it was him. And anyway, next thing is now you end up, right, Sanders, you could do it this time. No, he sabotages himself, and he helps block Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard's the only person who stuck up for him, and he hasn't mentioned her name once. And yet she's the one who wants to stop all illegal wars. She's the one who's actually a soldier, who is actually a medic in the US Army for the last 16 years. So she's seen war. She wants to end it. They all block her. The media blocks her. Sanders doesn't mention her once, even though she actually put her own career on the line to point out the DNC corruption against him. That tells you that Sanders has either been threatened like he was last time when he came on stage with a mark on his face saying, I'm with her, or he's been in on it all along because he's been a politician for so many years. I don't know. It's US politics. It's just as dodgy as politics in Australia, New Zealand, and every other country I've lived, England, Scotland, wherever else, right? Same shit, different. South Africa. God, I lived in South Africa for 4 years of my life. That's you think that's as bad as it gets, but I think America is as bad as it gets, right? So that's where I get my theory from, that maybe they're all in cahoots. So we already know the Australians have come up with a coronavirus similar. It's a slightly different strain that's now been detected in South Korea, is it? I think the Australian one. But they all go to each other's labs. All these scientists from different countries. You think China's the enemy? That's funny, because Chinese scientists are over there in North Carolina and in, is it Connecticut? There's a few places where they have, no, Maryland, sorry, where they have these labs. Now, these labs are meant to be illegal because the US Biowarfare Act and international conventions that make this stuff illegal, yet somehow these assholes are working on these viruses. And somehow countries like Israel say, oh, we're close to having a vaccine. You can't even start on a vaccine until you have the virus. It doesn't work that way around. You don't create a vaccine and say, right, let's create the virus for this. You create the virus and then you create the vaccine. That tells you at least Israel, Australia, USA, and England are in cahoots. Possibly the Chinese, maybe they were just paying money, and America being the false capitalists they are, because true capitalists, for example, if you had true capitalism in America, you would have decent internet speeds. You would have decent banks. You know why? Because it's free market competition, and the banks would be as good as they are in places like New Zealand and South Africa, right? They've got good banks there. They don't. American banks suck. Australian banks suck as well, but American banks particularly suck. English banks used to suck, but they're getting a lot better because people were having basically, because they were in the EU, is making things change. Anyway, I'm going down a different avenue there. So here's the reason. Here's the different agendas that I think could be playing out here. One could be because we knew that economic collapse were going to happen. You look back at my videos, you'll see time and time again, I've said the latest it will be is 2022, and it most likely will happen sometime between the end of 2019 and middle of 2020. And look what's happening. This could be the trigger that set off the economic collapse that they blame for the economic collapse, instead of the fact that they've been printing money like it's gone out of fashion. They've been doing stock buybacks, so Apple shares have been going up. All these, the stock market that Trump has been boasting about has only happened, this rise has only happened because the printing of fake money. And why not? Because China's been doing the same thing. They've been going around the world buying houses here and there, making property prices go up. And what does that mean? It means the average person has to slave their fucking ass off just to buy a pathetic little shitty house and get in a lifetime or maybe a double lifetime mortgage they can pass on to their children, right? We are all being ripped off by the same people. Doesn't matter what country you're in. You could be North Korea, you could be America, you can be, I don't know, Iran, whatever else. What happens sometimes is these big clubs, as George Carlin used to call them, that we're not in, Sometimes they fall out with each other, and that's what I think's happened in the case, possibly in the case of Iran. And that is why they miraculously got the virus, which, by the way, is not the same strain as the one that's in China. It's got a higher mortality rate, which is over 6%. Same as the one in Italy. Why Italy? I'm in Slovenia, right next to Italy. Up above me in Austria, only a few cases, only a couple of cases in our country as well. Not many down in Croatia, down below us either. Tons over in Italy. So they've had to close the border. They closed the border in the UK. I've got a business I work for in the UK. If my friends own it, we've told everyone to stay at home for the past 2 weeks now, right? Because I knew something was going on, and it is. But then again, we only know what the media tells us. And it could be some big elaborate hoax. It could be, when I say hoax, I don't mean the whole thing is in your head, the whole thing isn't happening. What I mean is, you take something that's a normal flu strain and you report it differently, because we all know how honest our media companies are, from the BBC in the UK, which is force-funded government propaganda. Let me just have a side note here. You notice if you go onto RT, their news is better than CNN, but it's still got propaganda. But their news shows, like the Kaiser Report, are very truthful. So what do? They put on there that every show that comes on through YouTube, it says this is funded by the Russian government. And it says it in Wikipedia. You go to Wikipedia, that is not the words that are used. It also now says, it didn't used to say it, but if you go on to Al Jazeera, which is also government funded, you go on to the Iranian one, which is called Press TV, it says the same thing, but it says the government funded. So the governments they don't like, they say this is government funded. The governments they do like the United Kingdom, they've only finally started telling the truth. And Al Jazeera and which other ones? There are other ones as well that are government funded around the world. SABC from South Africa, TVNZ from New Zealand. The list goes on and on. But all of those countries, what it says instead, you look at the wording for yourself. I'm not lying. You look at it yourself. It says this is a public broadcast network. That's the same thing as being government funded. But notice the words are different. That's to get in your head. That's to tell you, beware, this can't be trusted. Oh, you can trust us. You can't trust any of them. And now my dog's going to drink to annoy the hell out of you. Anyway, so what could be happening is the virus, or whatever the thing that they're exaggerating, it could be an exaggerated virus, or it could actually be what's going on, right? We don't know. And the reason for it could be to crash the economy, and also to create a situation where they lock down the borders to allow them to move soldiers around. Now, we can already see they had the war games in China. For God's sake, Ron, are you going to drink forever? Yes, I think he's going to drink forever. They had the war games in China, and then miraculously this virus appeared. Then the media starts telling us it's from this fish market, which they destroyed. They didn't clean it, they just destroyed it. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Let's just sweep it under the carpet. So you have those war games to begin with, and you have war games starting in Europe. So let's all stay still. Let's lock down the borders, but let's move 30,000 US troops from the USA to here. Immediately after telling us that they've locked down US borders to people from the EU. It all sounds very, very fishy, doesn't it? It all sounds like what could be happening is Britain and America in particular, not the only countries, but Britain and America in particular, with one had the world reserve currency previously. America has the world reserve currency now, but America also had the petrodollar, meaning that anyone in the world who trades oil has to trade it in dollars, meaning they have to buy dollars, meaning the Americans can do whatever they want. And unlike Zimbabwe and Argentina, their currency won't hyperinflate, because the integrity is maintained by the fact that people have to buy it. They can't dump it, or they can't buy oil. Very, very sneaky strategy that was employed years ago, as was in 1971 the removal of the gold standard by Nixon, Richard Nixon, which basically meant they could print all the money they wanted. They could print a lot of money before, because they could take the same ounce of gold and they could spread it across and basically sell it 50 times, print notes 50 times for the same coin. But then things moved completely off kilter when they went fully off the gold standard, and other countries in the world went off the silver standard. And since then, the price of silver and gold was suppressed by the banks to make sure it wouldn't undermine currencies of the world, not just the US and England, but other currencies too. Then we had the situation where the Iraqis wanted to say, screw you, America, we're going to trade oil not in our own currency, but in the euro. The European Union should have liked that. The UK, around about the same time, were being kind of forced to join the euro, but they didn't want to. And you had William Hague saying, save the pound. They did save the pound, they didn't join the euro, and then they joined America in an illegal war, because we know they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. It was a complete lie, and they knew it was a lie, but they sent our soldiers in any way to destroy the country, and 1 million deaths later, which is effectively a Holocaust, you have child slave markets, just like you did later on when Hillary destroyed Libya for doing a similar thing, right? Now, if Britain hadn't gone in and helped America with that war in Iraq, the European Union would have absolutely blitzed. The currency would have just gone insane, because it would have been the currency of choice for some countries. Russia would have followed suit. So all the big oil producers, with the exception of Saudi Arabia, so all you would have is Saudi oil getting sold in dollars, and everyone else's oil getting sold in euros. That's what would have happened. Why did Britain join? Because Britain have always wanted to destroy the European Union. And why did Britain leave? Why did Brexit happen? Was it because the people wanted it? No, because what happened was the EU never had control of the UK borders. The UK have always had control of the UK borders, and they allowed all these refugees to come in. But why did the refugees come in? It was because the wars that America and Britain started illegally in the Middle East in the first place. They created the refugees by destroying their countries, and then wondered why they wanted somewhere to go. So of course they came to Europe, because it's a lot closer than America. And that then begs the question, what the fuck was America doing half a way round the world? I'll tell you what they were doing. They were instigating chaos in our region. And it worked, because now we got chaos all through Germany, it's the same thing. It's the same. The Fourth Reich rising up is basically the EU. America's doing it basically become what England was, which is the global empire that has got its feet in every country. 150 nations, 159 nations, I think it is, have US air bases in them. Why are they all over the world? Why are they all over the world and then blame Russia for Russian aggression? Even after the Cold War ended, they're still blaming Russian aggression, or Soviet aggression that was prior. You don't know who's on your side. You don't know who's not. They could all be in cahoots. We will never know. But one thing we do know for sure is that an enemy of the world is the system, not the people of America, not the people of England, the system in America. It's an enemy of the people in America. I know, because I used to live there, and I escaped that place. When I say escaped, I just left. I shut my company down. I did my taxes. My dad always told me, don't fuck with Uncle Sam. And I'll make sure I won't, because I know that they'll do anything. They'll drag Julian Assange out of any little hole. They'll drag Saddam Hussein or whoever it is out of any hole. They'll definitely drag you out. You're not anything compared to them. They'll destroy your life to take your savings off you. And I also don't live in England because I don't want to fund the Queen. I think that the biggest terrorist family in the history of terrorist families, and they're not even legitimate. Not that I think any monarchy is legitimate, but the simple fact is there was an illegitimate king. If you look at it, you can look up the... I'll put a link to it as well. The Plantagenet lines of... from King Henry onwards, years ago, this basically gave an illegitimate king, which is who they all spawn from now. And the actual legitimate king lives in Australia, believe it or not, and he's anti-monarchy. Anyway, that's a sidetrack story. So besides that, this is the crazy cookie one, but I want to mention it just in case, because you never know. This is the alien side of things. There could be a false alien invasion. Now, the reason why I say this is years ago, on TED Talks, there was a woman from DARPA, and she was showing the technology. Well, she wasn't really showing it, but she was telling us about technology that DARPA have. And it was something the size of your thumb that could move at Mach 10, or even Mach 20. But I think it was at least Mach 10. And then if you look on my channel, you'll see a video in New Zealand last year of a UFO, which is not an alien, it's just a UFO, moving at a horrendously fast speed. Where my it's a friend of my friend down in the South Island, New Zealand, who runs a helicopter thing for tourists to go around in the South Island. And this thing comes past, and you can hear it going, and it moves ultra fast. It looks what Joe Rogan had on his show. He was talking about these tic tac things. Well, it was only a few years before that the DARPA told us they have this technology. So I think it's US technology. Given the fact that's in New Zealand, and both the NSA and NASA operate in the South Island of New Zealand, have been caught out before operating in ways that they shouldn't against the New Zealand population, who are basically socially engineered zombies who don't even realize it. That's why I left New Zealand as well. It pretty much tells us that something is going on. They've been doing a lot of testing. And what better way, when you run out of tricks, when the monetary supply system has been over-leveraged so much, when you have been bailing your banks out with false money for so long and the trick is coming to an end, than to say, right, what are we going to do? Let's create a pandemic to destroy our competitor economy, which is China, so that no one can move around. Because we know that once the thing goes, this is as good as it ever gets, right? We've got all this printed money. We've used that money to create the biggest military in the world. We've still been ripping off our people who've been making good money, who've been paying more taxes than anyone in the world. So they basically, out of complete falsehoods, created a situation where they can actually build the biggest military in the world. And Britain is the second biggest supplier of military weapons. And England doesn't produce very much. They produce banknotes. They produce some pharmaceuticals, like America does, and they produce a lot of weapons. The BAE systems are next after the American giants Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. They're next in line. And then you've got DuPont, who are, I think, French or maybe American as well. They do materials and stuff. But besides the point, I think France are actually the third biggest producer of weapons. So it could be these countries are in cahoots. They're all allies. It could just be the leaders of these countries and we're all the enemy. But the thing they could be doing is a false UFO invasion. Start with the virus, then you end up with these fast-moving machines, which for all we know are backwards engineered from real UFOs or might not be. And the last thing is something where it's completely left field and it could actually be aliens, but I don't think so. But if it was, you'll have to look at, for example, a theory my mother had years ago was that there's a drug called scopolamine in South America. You might have seen it before. They call it devil's breath. Prostitutes in Colombia and a few other places will blow it in your face, and then you're susceptible to anything they say. You will jump off a bridge, you'll empty your bank account, you'll do whatever they say, if it doesn't kill you first. Because if the dose isn't quite right, you can actually die. Anyway, scopolamine is something that she said could be used. If you look at Obama, how he was very astute, and then sometimes he wouldn't look that smart. Same as Trump. Trump looks dumber sometimes than other times. And yet some of the things they say is like, wow, Trump's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Oh, look, Obama's doing what he said he was going to do. Oh, no, now he's sent a whole bunch more soldiers to Syria. And now same with Trump. Oh, he's bringing soldiers home. Oh, no, now he's changed his mind again. Could it be that this permanent government, the FBI and the CIA and the IRS, the government that doesn't change, doesn't matter who comes in power, it never changes, the people who are really in control, could it be that they're actually manipulating these puppets with mind control drugs? We already know about the psyops that have done in America. We already know about everything from Operation Paperclip to this is not conspiracy theories. This is things that have happened, right? The Gulf of Tonkin incident that happened in Vietnam that kicked off the Vietnam War. That's not conspiracy theory. That happened. So please don't ever call me a conspiracy theorist, because you won't. Everything I say on here that will be a theory, I'm telling you it's a theory. If I don't say it's a theory, it's because it's an actual fact, right? So that's one thing it could be. I think the alien thing is very, very, very unlikely. You got to remember, if you are someone who believes in aliens, it's not just about the fact that we are so far. Okay, it could be wormholes, it could be different dimensions. We might actually not need to go anywhere to find aliens. It could just be wormholes to a dimension that's right here, right next to us. That's what it could be. But it could also, whether it is dimensional jumps in different, in the exact same effective space that we're in right now, or whether it's something we have to go hundreds of light years, time is still a factor. Now, for all we know, the universe is infinite, right? As far as time wise, who's to say that aliens that lived and existed are living right now? Doesn't matter where in the universe it is. Who's to say it's living now? So time is just as much a barrier as distance is, okay? And then that's us looking only in a four-dimensional perspective, length, breadth, the spatial dimensions as well as time, 4 dimensions, right? We're not looking at the other dimensions there could also be, right? So I'll leave that there, but I don't want to go any further on that point. But basically, this could be the start of World War III. It could be locking us all down so we can't go anywhere. You will know this is happening if the media starts to get really locked down. Now, I've already noticed that a lot of YouTubers who are based in the USA has some of the slowest internet in the world anyway, but these are people who usually have a reliable link, and they tend to be chunking quite a lot. So it's almost like they're starting to affect the internet in the US. If they start to suppress it, we already know suppression is happening on Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. And why do those companies suppress information? Because they are the government's wing. The government don't want to break the law if they can help it. They don't want to break the Constitution if they can help it. If you start a couple of private companies, let's say the NSA did it, or let's say the NSA bought it behind the scenes, it would explain the 21 trillion missing dollars, right? From the audit that was done on the military. It would explain that, wouldn't it? Zuckerberg gets a big massive payoff. Here we take your company and we're running it now on behalf of the CIA and the FBI and whoever else. Why? Because we can now break the Constitution without breaking the law. Because a company doesn't have to obey freedom of speech. You're on a platform that they own. This is what could be happening, right? Now, this, I don't want to go on for ages because I'm already coming up to the half-hour mark, and I don't like to do videos longer than half an hour. But, if anyone's out there and they want me to speak about this longer, I'll delve into more reasons why, or just ask any questions. But I'm pretty suppressed, so I'd say that the likelihood of someone new finding my channel is almost, since 2017, is never going to happen. I've already shed thousands of subscribers on Twitter since 2017, since they first started earmarking me. The 3 companies started earmarking me for destruction. I don't do things that can get me strikes, but that hasn't stopped them shedding all these subscribers. Not as many on YouTube, I'd say. I probably lost about 80% of my subscribers on YouTube, but I've lost I'm down to 600, I think, from many thousands that I had on Twitter. I had more subscribers on Twitter in 2009 than I have now. That just gives you an example of the kind of media suppression that's going on. Never mind the fact that you can say certain things and get your post pulled on Twitter. We are living in Orwellian times. If you live in a country that you're allowed to have weapons, you should probably own them by now. You should probably own water purifiers. You should probably be a bit of a prepper. Or you could be like me and say, you know what, at the end of the day, what am I going to be able to do? Nothing. I don't care if I live or die. I've had a good life, and hope to have a longer life. But if this is the way it's gonna pan out, oh well. As long as my dog's okay. So, yeah, I would say those are the 3 likely things. It is the cover for economic collapse, which was going to happen anyway, and now will be blamed on this virus. And once we're all locked down and the media's giving us their opinions, God knows what other narratives they'll feed us then. And remember, the lowest IQ people, they're the dangerous ones. You need to get away from populated areas because dumb people congregate, well, everywhere. If you're surrounded by a whole bunch of dumb people, all it takes is a single media narrative to change the security of your life. So I would say even if you have to live in your car, go somewhere less populated, even just for a while, even just for a break. Right now, I would say that in the space of time, if you imagine the knock-on effect from all the things that get built in America and all these other countries, all the shoes that get made in Vietnam and in Taiwan and stuff like that, the electronics equipment that gets made still in Japan and other places, right? All the components mostly come from China because these assholes, these complete asshats that created this situation in the first place of having this globalist economy, where instead of growing food in any one country, we have a situation where people in Africa can't even grow onions anymore because these idiots here in Europe can grow them for cheaper and give this surplus out because our government are surplusing things, are funding stuff so they don't close down. Same in America. So no one country produces all that it needs. And that means that we need to all use oil to send stuff back and forth that we wouldn't need to send otherwise. It takes away your self-reliance as a people. And this is what I think another one of the ultimate goals is that they can have their supply lines when everything goes to hell in a handbasket, but we, the people, can't. And that is why I really believe that no matter where you're from in the world, we are the cattle, we are the sheep. They are the wolves, they are the farmers. And automation was already happening. And when things were going to become fully automated, we were all a burden anyway. They don't need us. We are past our use-by date. I think this is the end game. The end game because A, the people being the enemy of the governments are no longer surplus to requirement. And also the other governments that are in cahoots with, well, there's no honor among thieves and among scumbags. So once they knew, England and America and Israel and countries like that, like maybe Australia as well, once they knew this is as good as it gets, they think, well, you know what? We've got pole position now. If we allow this charade to go on longer, maybe China will take pole position. And when they decide to cull their people, they might also be more powerful than us. So let's not let that happen. That's what is most likely happening right now. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that.